Judiciary of Malaysia is largely centralized despite Malaysia's federal constitution, heavily influenced by the English common law, as well as Islamic jurisprudence. There are generally two types of trials: criminal and civil. The hierarchy of courts begins from the Magistrates' Court, Sessions Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, and finally, the Federal Court. The jurisdiction of the courts in civil or criminal matters are contained in the Subordinate Courts Act 1948 and the Courts of Judicature Act 1964. Article 121 of the Constitution provides for two high courts of coordinate jurisdiction: the High Court in Malaya and the High Court in Sabah and Sarawak. Thus this creates two separate local jurisdiction of the courts, for Peninsular Malaysia and for East Malaysia. The highest position in the judiciary of Malaysia is the Chief Justice of the Federal Court of Malaysia, followed by the President of the Court of Appeal, the Chief Judge of Malaya, and the Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak. The superior courts are the High Court, Court of Appeal, and the Federal Court, while the Magistrates' Courts and the Sessions Courts are classified as subordinate courts. The current Chief Justice of the Federal Court effective the 2nd of May 2019 is Yang Amat Arif Tun Tengku Mamun Tuan Mat. The President of the Court of Appeal is Dato' Rahana Yusuf. And the Chief Judge of Malaya is Tan Sri Dato' Sri Azhar Mohammed. The current Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak is Dato' Abang Iskandar Abang Hashim. The Federal Court is the highest court in Malaysia. The Federal Court may hear appeals of civil decisions of the Court of Appeal where the Federal Court grants leave to do so. The Federal Court also hears criminal appeals from the Court of Appeal, but only in respect of matters heard by the High Court in its original jurisdiction. The Court of Appeal generally hears all civil appeals against decisions of the High Courts except where against judgment or orders made by consent. In cases where the claim is less than ₹250,000, the judgment or order relates to costs only, and the appeal is against a decision of a judge in chambers on an interpleader summons on undisputed facts. The leave of the Court of Appeal must first be obtained. The Court of Appeal also hears appeals of criminal decisions of the High Court. It is the court of final jurisdiction for cases which began in any subordinate courts. The two high courts in Malaysia have general supervisory and revisionary jurisdiction over all the subordinate courts, and jurisdiction to hear appeals from the subordinate courts in civil and criminal matters. The high courts have unlimited civil jurisdiction, and generally hear actions where the claim exceeds ₹1 million, other than actions involving motor vehicle accidents, landlord and tenant disputes and distress. The high courts hear all matters relating to. The high courts have unlimited jurisdiction in all criminal matters other than matters involving Islamic law. The high courts have original jurisdiction in criminal cases punishable by death. Cases are heard by a single judge in the High Court, or by a judicial commissioner. While High Court judges enjoy security of tenure, judicial commissioners are appointed for a term of 2 years, and do not enjoy similar protection under the Constitution. An application for a judicial review is applied in this court. The Magistrates' Courts and Sessions Courts in Malaysia have the power in both criminal and civil matters, somewhat like the former quarter sessions in England, but does not exceed ₹1 million as per SS 65-93 SCA. Also, by virtue of S 65 SCA, the parties to a legal action may enter into an agreement in writing to grant jurisdiction to the Sessions Court to try an action beyond its prescribed monetary jurisdiction aforesaid. Magistrates are divided into first-class and second-class magistrates, the former being legally qualified and having greater powers. Second-class magistrates are normally appointed. The Court of Pengulu, or Malay village head, has the power to hear civil matters of which the claim does not exceed RM50, where the parties are of an Asian race and speak and understand the Malay language. The Pengulu Court's criminal jurisdiction is limited to offences of a minor nature charged against a person of Asian race which is specially enumerated in his warrant, which can be punished with a fine not exceeding RM25. However, the Pengulu Court has been abolished since the 1st of March 2013 in Sabah and Sarawak. There are no Pengulis courts. But there are instead native courts having jurisdiction on matters of native law and custom. The Court for Children, previously known as the Juvenile Court, hears cases involving minors except cases carrying the death penalty, which are heard in high courts instead. Cases for children are governed by the Child Act 2001. A child is defined as any person below the age of 18. The Special Court was established in 1993 to hear cases of offences or